Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence. I'm Michael, the Opportunity Ambassador and MC for today's show. And today's show title is, Are Your Rituals Keeping You in Bondage? Today with me are my two favorite co-hosts, Agnieszka, the Psychosomatic Illuminator.
And I have fixed my audio issues, so you guys should hear me better now. Is that correct?
Wonderful. Yes, you're coming in loud and clear.
Thank you.
Same here.
And Dennis, our Freedom Facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love, everyone. Glad to be with you.
All right, so we're talking about rituals today, and what's the problem with rituals?
Hold on.
What's going on?
We have to define first a ritual. What is a ritual, actually?
All right, what is ritual? Maybe that's where we start.
So I found a definition that says it's a word from the 1500s, from French. Don't shoot me, but I don't know French so well. It writes ritual, or directly from Latin ritualis, relating to religious rites. So rites or religious rites is kind of like the base of that word that we know as ritual today, it seems. From ritus, religious observance or ceremony, custom, usage, and yeah, that was the gist of it. So there is a religious connotation that comes along with the word, which is quite interesting, because one of the first definitions one of the first things that popped into my mind when we did the teaser show on Monday, was also like a religious thing. So religious rituals, for me at least, were some of the ones that stood out the most in terms of the visibility, and they came to my mind first. What kind of rituals did you have in mind when you hear the word ritual? What comes to your mind?
Well, I certainly think of kind of the passage of time from children to adulthood, and kind of the rites of passage, I guess, that I think to a large part have been replaced in the modern world by kind of different versions of those things. And to some degree, the idea of adolescence has kind of grown into adulthood, where people don't really necessarily know when they're adults anymore. And with the dependencies on government and socialism and so forth, I think a lot of people are forever in adolescence, which I think is a creative word, by the way. But certainly something that we should be examining when it comes to rituals. What are we actually getting? What are we getting done? What are we getting from these things? I think in a lot of cases, a lot of the rituals have been taken away or put into different contexts, which serve different masters.
Yeah, I definitely think. Sorry,
rituals,
Agnieszka.
right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we have different types of rituals. We have rituals that are societal and family rituals. We have religious rituals, right? And I think that in a lot of ways, when there were societal or religious rituals, and then Catholic religion took over, or Christian religions took over at certain points, they tried to replace the old rituals with new rituals, with Christian rituals, and that sometimes worked better than others. But yeah, also each family has a ritual. Oh, and the other thing I meant to say is that even if we remove all the rituals from society, children and young adults will always find rituals. So there's the drinking thing, like you're going to start drinking around 16, that's a ritual now. We could have a healthier ritual, but the society does not provide one, so the children kind of find their own.
Yeah. I think it's a very important point that it's something I observe as well, that certain rituals have been taken away, and not just recently, but for many years or decades or maybe even centuries, and have been replaced by other things that are oftentimes that seem less meaningful and seem to have a different vibe or a different energy, or that seem at least to overshadow or to take away of the original meaning of a ceremony or a ritual or a habit that has been established and has been rooted deep within sometimes the tradition of a people. um, and so I feel it's very interesting, since we're looking also at the problem, what actually happens if you take certain rituals away, and how the void is being filled, and what is the outcome that we can observe, not only for us as individuals, but also for the world that we live in, for the community that we are part of.
Well, you think of, we just, April 15th was not too long ago. And to a large degree, that in the United States is the ritual of paying your taxes or filing your taxes. And to a large degree, I think that's certainly one of the religions that a lot of people have adopted, whether they know it or not, to the authority of the U.S. government and their fiat money system. And to a large part, that in itself is kind of a ritual that's taken over. But I can think of like the Super Bowl. There's like 1 billion people that watch the Super Bowl, and that's become a ritual for them. And of course, there's that halftime show that usually is some kind of satanic version of whatever kind of entertainment they've got for that particular year. But what's that all about?
That's super strange, and then that has been out there and documented pretty well in the at least it seems to me in the last decade or so. Some of those things that might have been hidden, are, if they're hidden in plain sight today, and they're talked about and they're documented, and they're right there for those who have eyes to see, to really recognize. And it's really frightening if you take a closer look, and you start researching, you start understanding the meaning of the kind of the symbols that are being used and of the actions that are being taken. It might look just a little weird or a little strange, but if you go into it, then you see that, wow, there's so many details, and it just it becomes highly unlikely, if not impossible, that all of this is really coincidence or by accident. And I found, I would like to share one resource that I found really valuable over many years, which is a website called Vigilant Citizen. I'm sure you might be familiar with it. And they have been
Mike
documenting.
probably knows the guy who runs it or something like that.
Who is that? You know the guy?
I don't know. I'm just guessing. Mike probably does.
I found it really, the articles on that website, they are, they document not only those, the what is it, the football thing that you just mentioned, but also, was it the Olympic Games, for example. There have been some really weird stuff going on for the shows.
Yeah,
there.
I think the London one was the one where
Yes.
they had like the giant
The doctors
needles
and
and
yeah,
dots and
crazy.
flipping
But that
off
was
beds.
the Chinese one, the China one that had
The London one had it too. Yeah, really, and really crazy. And they also, on that website, they go in detail into especially like pop culture, all those music clips that are really well researched and detailed, and movies as well. And then the life and death of celebrities and of the so-called stars that we ought to follow. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that because I think it's a
I
really
wonder why
valuable
they're
research.
called stars. Have you guys ever thought about why celebrities, that we call them stars?
Yeah, because we're supposed to follow them.
But do we
Well,
follow?
I know that they on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, they're stars, right?
Yeah, but somebody
But
came
that-
up with that terminology. Like, why? What's the purpose behind it? Because nothing is by accident in this world, right?
Yeah,
So
but
who came up with it?
Well,
and
they are
what's their purpose?
five-pointed stars on the Walk of Fame. I can report that. So I don't know, is that like the pentagram thing too going on there?
Maybe it's probably some kind of a distraction from something else.
I think
Like,
it's
look at
pretty.
these stars. Don't look at these ones.
It's pretty obvious too that these are stars that have been put there purposefully, and that are oftentimes not shining on their own, but that are being guided to speak as they are told. And yeah, and if you go deeper down that rabbit hole, then yeah, there's some really strange and weird stuff going on. And yeah, so it does seem in the open right now, in the last years especially, that these are the personalities that we're supposed to look up to. And then, of course, we've been indoctrinated by their behavior, by their views, and by their comments from early on. From, I don't know, the
If we're supposed
cartoon
to look
channel
up to
to.
them because they're stars, of course we're supposed to emulate them, right?
Mhm. And we're supposed to follow
Yeah,
them in their behavior.
yeah, and they've created kind of like the Oscars, they've got a whole ritual that they go through. They got the red carpet and they got the dresses and people talking about all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, what they said, and then the parties afterwards. And then, of course, what they said the next day and the whole week before and after,
And what they
and all the photo shoots and
about their
everything.
bathroom habits. Like, I mean, there's serious sickness going on there because like we don't need to know anything about these people, or not as much. Like, it's just weird.
And what's the meaning behind those kind of rituals that have been certainly artificially created and put out there? And what happens with us if we adopt these kind of rituals as something that fills our lives, right? Our day by day lives. We watch
Like watching
football.
television.
Yeah,
People do
watching
that.
television. We're talking about the trivia that they're spilling out right there, and then you turn around and then look at your life, and it's filled with all this meaningless stuff that doesn't really have any meaning. And then the rituals that we end up adopting or filling our lives with, they're not they don't really have anything to do with the life that we are living, but our life actually becomes filled with that, and it becomes empty. And so if you look at rituals that have to do, for example, with the change of seasons, with what has been going on with bringing in the yield from the fields, with celebrating the end of the winter, the solstice, all those connect you back to nature, and in a sense connect you to who you really are, and what you are part of. But I feel the rituals that we mentioned a little earlier, these are really rituals that are put in place to disconnect us from nature, and in extension from who we truly are, and therefore they playing into the divide and conquer that we have been talking about so much here.
Yeah, and if talking about the idea of the extended adolescence, the fact that you go through 12 years of school, and there's obviously rituals that you graduate from elementary school and middle school and high school, then you have to go to college, and
And
you
even
go
the
there.
Friday quiz. The Friday quiz is the ritual for some teachers. Like, you're going to be tested every Friday.
Yeah. Well, and, so you're talking, probably 23, 25 years old before you're actually in the real workforce. And of course, then you've got the ritual of, essentially moving from the bottom to the top.
So when I
You've
was
got
like
all those
23 years old or 25 years old, and I started working in like a real job, my first impression was like, oh my God, I'm back in high school. Like, I thought I was going to be an adult, but here I am with the people who are doing stuff, just like the same weird stuff that the people in high school did, like backstabbing and talking behind each other's back and competing. And, I don't understand why we have to bring these kind of strange rituals into adulthood too, into office buildings and,
Well, and I think there's also kind of people that identify with particular things, because I know myself, being a college graduate and a construction professional, there were things that we did, like, one of the things I did is I became a part of the John Purdue Club, which is kind of the athletic supporters of the athletic programs. And, we would have dinners, and obviously, like, me, football was one of the things that, so like every Saturday morning was another ritual where we'd go before, get drunk before the game.
football is the original distraction, the bread and circuses, the original point of attention, where you're not looking at your life or how you're living, but you're looking outside. You're looking forward to the Friday night football or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole, that's half of the year basically wasted, just every Saturday going to either the home game or going to the away game.
Golf, and you could spend your whole life just watching other people play games.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the problem is you've got all these different things. You got the 4th of July, you got the Labor Day parades and stuff like that. You've got Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's.
Seem like a giant kindergarten. You know, today we're going to be watching these boys play sports, and tomorrow we're going to watch these children, you know, do this thing, or these adults, you know what I mean?
We didn't mention one.
Yeah.
You know which one? Which ritual we didn't mention? That used to be pretty common.
Bread and circuses?
John Lennon had a quote about it. He said, "Rituals are important. Nowadays, it's hip not to be married. I'm not interested in being hip." So marriage is certainly a ritual that has been established over many years, and that, you know, it seems even back in John Lennon times, you know, kind of came out of style.
Yeah, absolutely. And there again is kind of what that transition to adulthood to some degree has been kind of altered in a lot of ways because like marriage used to be an institution and now it's just kind of another kind of circus that people go through numerous times and
See, I have a
maybe
problem
never
with
become an
marriage.
adult.
I have a problem with marriage. Like, I don't have a problem with getting married and having ceremony and, you know, having your friends witness your ceremony, and even maybe having someone like presiding over the ceremony, maybe a religious leader or something. But the way they're doing it these days, it's like a man in the skirt needs to give you permission to get married. And that bothers me on some level because, like, if I want to get married, I don't need a religious leader or somebody in a judge's uniform or whatever to give me permission. I'm a free human being. I can do whatever I want.
Mhm.
Can't I?
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think the whole third party is very questionable. I mean, I do see the advantage of like making a commitment in front of your friends to another person as being uh, you know useful and unique. But beyond that, I definitely don't see the strange guy in the dress uh, giving you your blessing and then writing it down on a government piece of
And
paper.
signing it. Not valid until he signs it.
But with that said, so there's a lot of potential problems there with the rituals that are out there for people to fall into as far as the standard living. But what are we actually after with rituals? What is the value of rituals?
Dennis.
Well, I would say that one of the downfalls of it, before I go in answering your question, is also a collectivism that is introduced through rituals, through the kind of, you know, bad and artificial rituals that we are being exposed to. So we are, you know, we are being put in a group. People who are not following those rituals, they're being ostracized. You know, they're not part of the team. So it's like a group thing that's being installed through that. So the I see rituals as something that can be a tool. And if it is a tool, and if we're aware of the power of that tool, and it's potentially a very powerful tool, and if we implement it properly in our lives, then we can use it as a tool to actually uplift ourselves and uplift others as well. But then of course, if we're not aware of that, and if we let rituals take over our lives, and rituals that, you know, are controlled and installed by others, then that certainly is the source also of many problems that we're facing today.
What are your thoughts, Agnieszka, as far as the value of rituals?
I think that if you're the master of your own rituals, they can be very valuable in strengthening you and making you feel more integrated with the world at large. But I think that if they're imposed by the outside world, society, or anything outside of yourself, I think then it becomes a disempowering exercise because there's your inner, like, and I'm not talking about, like, a lot of people have been calling each other childlike or whatever for not wanting to follow certain rituals in our society. But I think that it's not about being childlike. I think it's about autonomy and being autonomous of your own over your own body and over your own self. And there's no need for people to force other people into rituals. Like, if you want to follow this ritual, whatever, do whatever you want, wear a hazmat suit. But why step into other people's, you know, place, like if you're, or bubble, and try to force them to follow your rituals, right? That's when it becomes disempowering for both the person who's trying to force others into a ritual and also for the people who are being forced into it. What do you think, Dennis? Mike?
I feel that, you know, and that's going already like to a, you know, from to a level that's beyond just the physical level. So if our true nature is free, and you know the title today is are rituals keeping you in bondage? So if our freedom, so to say, is being held in bondage, um, or we think that we are in bondage, and and we make rituals being part of that bondage that holds us, then we can use rituals to kind of counter that and to free us from that. But it's one possible tool, and it extends to, you know, whether it is philosophy, or you know, other people use worship and use different thing, you know, on the physical, emotional, or on the mental level, to free themselves, or also, you know, to let others control them. So you know, I agree that rituals, if we are aware of them, and if we, it's also, and we touched upon that on Monday, right? If we have an intention behind it, if we are aware of what's going on, and if we put and add our own intention to the ritual, that we, you know, whether it's marriage, or whether it's, I don't know, sitting together with the family once per day or once per week, or you know, like, or calling mommy, you know, every day, and even, you know, those things can become a ritual. And if we put our intention into it, and if we put our, how would I say, goodness into it, and our goodwill, our love into that, then this can be something really transformative that leads us all the way. Is it necessary? Do we have to have it? No, you know, there's other ways as well of doing that, but I can definitely see the value. And in times like these, where you know, people are you know, are depressed, people are being, you know, kept at home and prevented from freeing themselves and showing their freedom and living their freedom, as we, you know, mostly have been used to. It certainly might be a helpful hint to look at rituals, and to look what kind of rituals we can establish to, you know, to free ourselves on a different level, maybe on a level that we have not considered before.
Well, if you look at something like Burning Man, for example, which, you know, I know there's some questionable beginnings to that, and potentially some questionable ties in regard to that. But for the most part, it was a celebration of freedom out in the middle of the desert, away from everybody else. They basically create a city in a place where there's like nothing else, and people flock to it, and there is a great deal more freedom allowed during that particular event. And then, of course, the government comes in, and before long, you know, they're essentially shutting that down as well, right? I mean, they've shut that down, and so obviously there is something to that ritual that is powerful. And I do believe that, like, when we get together with other people and we do things that empower ourselves, that's definitely something that like the powers that be are really kind of shading us away from, to a large degree, with the circumstances that we have today. What do you think about that? Why are they doing that? And if that's the case, then shouldn't we be acknowledging that there's something really powerful here?
You know, people coming together for a common purpose. You know,
Yeah.
that's the original meaning of the word church. And I saw it years ago, and then I tried to confirm it, but it's really hard to find. But I remember, like, somewhere it said that when two or more gather together, that's the church. That's what the church is. And so that's what the church is supposed to be: two or more of you gathering together for a common purpose. And it also harkens to that egregor that we talked about on another show before, where the energy that binds people when they're working together for a common purpose, or gathering together for a common purpose, or even partying together, you know, there is always that energy that's between us, that's that non-physical almost entity that is created by human intentions when we get together, and that can be beautiful if you curate it to be beautiful. But if you just allow chaos in, it'll be chaos.
Is that a Bible quote where it says, "If two or more in my name gather, I shall be
It has
there"?
to do
Something like that.
to do with the Bible. But I also remember reading an article like long time ago that the word church meant people gathering together for a common purpose.
Congregation, is that another name that's being used instead of church as well?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds to me like it would be of a similar meaning in terms of the root meaning of the word.
Yeah, absolutely. Any comments, Dennis? No
No, not
comments
so
from our
far.
listeners?
No, I haven't noticed
Well,
it.
we're all part of autonomy, and autonomy is something that's relatively new as far as a group of people gathering together. And we do have some initial rituals that as you become a graduate, but we were actually, Agnieszka and myself, we were talking about kind of creating kind of a series of rituals that people could go through as they progress through autonomy. And to some degree, I think that's the opportunity that we have when we do create our own organizations, when we group together. We have the opportunity to be very creative about how we go about coming together and making those things more meaningful and more powerful through a deeper understanding of what is important to us and what are the things that we're actually trying to reinforce in ourselves and each other. What are your thoughts on that?
Reinforce or raise ourselves or cultivate or develop or reach for, how many different ways can we say self-excellence, self-improvement, self-elevation? Reverse crabs in the bucket. But you can do it to yourself. You can just like stop pulling yourself back into the bucket and climb out. Can you?
So it is like establishing a common ground, right? That's what I see, whether it's marriage or whether it's getting together with a group of teenagers or young adults that go through some kind of ceremony or ritual then to prepare themselves or to go to this time of change, of becoming an adult. Or then in case of autonomy, there's a bunch of people coming together and they have similar ideas and a similar perspective, in some ways, and in other ways, we're different in many ways too, but we have this common ground of looking at freedom, of looking at a life in autonomy, and striving to create and to facilitate that for us, for our families, and for each other. So when we come together, as Agnieszka, you were hinting at, two or even more, and we find this common ground, and then we have this as a foundation, and then we establish certain rituals that we then repeat, then that is certainly something that gives momentum, and that gives potentially like a huge energy to whatever we're planning or we're doing. And I see that being perpetrated in the so-called the powers that shall not be, in their satanic rituals, in their in the kind of rituals that we touched upon, or we didn't go into detail because it doesn't need to be. But there is also, they seem to be paying close attention to things like dates and meticulous how would you say actions being taking place at certain days, at certain times, and in a particular order. And I feel that that is also part of them understanding and knowing the power of rituals, and the power it has of drawing people, and of for whichever purpose, for the good or for the bad. So if we understand those mechanisms, then we certainly can use them to forward our cause as well, and to work it for the cause that we decide, that we find our common ground in.
Well, I definitely think that in the native tribes, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but my understanding is that the guys that were picked as the chiefs were the guys that had all these big feathered headdresses, right? But each one of those feathers represented some event where they displayed something courageous or honorable that the rest of the tribe recognized and gave them one feather, and over a lifetime, they gathered so many feathers that they were considered the wisest people in their tribe. And so those were the people that effectively were the chieftains, the circle at the center of the tribe that guided the tribe and gave them wisdom. And I do feel like that's certainly something that's really profound in regard to how we recognize that in ourselves and others. And like, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we recognizing each other for the things that we find are the most, beneficial to ourselves and other people? Why don't we have those?
And have you learned, what are the feathers that are on our heads, and then how do we recognize those guys and girls that have a bunch of feathers on their head today? Because we certainly don't see feathers, like literal feathers on people's head. But have you learned and have you been trained to recognize, people with feathers, people that have integrity, people that have, values, that have, that live up to certain standards and that are good and that can help us on our path? Have we been trained? Have we been exposed to techniques, whether it's in conversation, in communication, or recognizing, Agnieszka is an expert in that, in your face, in your demeanor, in your behavior, in your language. Have we been prepared for that? I think for most of us, no, we haven't. And instead of that, our instincts, our gut feeling has been overlaid by pop culture. and
Expectations, my dear.
yeah.
You're expected to graduate, you're expected to get married, you're expected to get a job, you're expected to get a house, you're expected to drive a car.
Those
And
are the
if you don't
feathers,
drive
right?
a car, there's going to be comments and expectations laid upon you because you're not driving the car that you're supposed to be driving at your station for your situation in life.
These are the kind of feathers we're supposed to honor nowadays, isn't it?
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I think that's probably an area that we really do need to focus some attention on. When it comes to the groups and efforts that we make together, we probably should be doing a much better job of recognizing the qualities that people bring to the table that are valuable for the rest of us, so that those are the things that can be identified. Those are the things that people can identify themselves with, rather than the two trains of thought of the divide and conquer that leads to the same destination.
Excuse me, guys, but just a second.
So basically, recognize and be aware of who you congregate with, of who you mingle with, of who you surround yourself with, and then once you have established like a group or a partnership, or like a friendship with a certain amount of people, then probably the next step would be to establish some kind of rituals that together you choose upon, and that you choose to forward your cause.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I think that's a wide open opportunity that we're not really taking advantage of, and certainly would be useful for people to identify within their circles.
I just remember the Jamaican proverb. It says, lie with dogs and you rise with fleas.
Yeah, I think we're all flea bit at this point. We need to rethink what we're doing.
Definitely.
But I think rituals is a powerful way that we can turn this around and really create the kind of circles and people and groups and organizations that we can be proud to be a part of. So what are we going
definitely.
to do with raising excellence? Is there some way we can start giving each other feathers?
I was, when you guys
Maybe
were
we should be
talking about it,
recognizing
I was
other people's
thinking,
feathers.
and I'm not trying to be like an asshole here, I promise, but I was just thinking about LinkedIn, and like there was a time in my life when I was like really active in a bunch of groups and people randomly would give me comments for raising excellence. And I got a lot of comments. Sorry, there's background noise. One sec. Sorry, there's just music playing. Somebody came in. But yeah, what was I saying? Yes, LinkedIn. So people do randomly give notes or give comments on LinkedIn about how you're good at this or that. I don't know. I don't think I've ever asked anybody to give me any comments because I don't know. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants most of the time.
So there is at least one example of people doing something positive with LinkedIn. I don't know. I haven't been in LinkedIn for like 10, 12 years, something like that. So
Not terribly active because I haven't had a job since like, many years, but people do ask me for my expertise through LinkedIn, and I get some people asking for strategy sessions and stuff.
There is there's this quote from Bruce Lee where he hints at an interesting fact that we haven't touched upon yet regarding rituals, um, which is there are some rituals that have been around for centuries or for many years, and they seem, is it out of place, or they seem not to fit in our times, at least from my perspective. And so he of course comes from a background, of combat, of martial art, and I think he hints at an interesting fact right there. If you don't mind, I'll read it. He says, so that's Bruce Lee. Too much horsing around with unrealistic stances and classic forms and rituals is just too artificial and mechanical and doesn't really prepare the student for actual combat. A guy could get clobbered while getting into this classical mess. Classical methods like these, which I consider a form of paralysis, only solidify and constrain what was once fluid. Their practitioners are merely blindly rehearsing routines and stunts that will lead nowhere. And I think that's
hmm,
really interesting because if we keep on doing rituals just for the sake of the ritual itself, but we lose the connection to the fluidity, to the meaningfulness, right here and right now for us, then it's just empty as well. It's not full. It's not, it's just a void. No, void is the wrong word, but it is something that is not full with meaning for us right here and right now. So if you're just doing a ritual, or maintaining something, just for the sake of maintaining it, but not giving it meaningfulness right here and right now in our time, then I feel also ritual is not something that will really lead us or advance us much on our journey, on our life journey.
yeah, that's a very powerful quote. I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention because I do follow a lot of Bruce Lee's work.
Mhm.
Definitely read a lot of the books about him and so forth. But I never heard that quote before. So I think that kind of sums up what we're talking about here today.
Yeah,
That
I,
was excellent.
I feel it for, in capoeira, my background is capoeira, so there is this ritual of the roda, or the circle, and I believe I mentioned it on Monday. That is something where if it's done properly, you feel, mm, it is something beyond just, physical people standing there and throwing their legs up in the air and, hitting a drum and singing some songs, but it's something that actually has like a deep meaning, and I don't know, I like to say I feel it, not only in my skin, but I feel it in my soul, in my heart. And I feel like a connection there, like I feel connected with those that came before, with those that are here, right now around me. And, I feel also that I'm opening possibilities and ways for those that are still to come. And at the same time, maintaining this ritual. So, and it's a ritual, so that means certain things, are maintained, and it's not even always the form. Sure, there's rules, but then also there's freedom and there's improvisation. And actually it's not a contradiction to have rules on one side and to have freedom and improvisation on the other side. And especially in capoeira, I feel that it's very nicely highlighted that the two of them can actually coexist, and then there's always spontaneous expression as well, and there has to be room for that. And I kind of see that also in Bruce Lee's quote. If there is no room for spontaneous expression, for fluidity with what is going on right here and right now, then it becomes rigid, and it becomes something that can be boxed and that can be sold on a supermarket shelf, and then it becomes a product that and then it becomes part of the machine of the system, and then it has lost its original meaning. And on the other side, if there is a form, yet also there's fluidity, and there's room for freedom, for expression, for spontaneity, then then there's something that nobody can take, because you are in that as well. It's yours, and you can make it yours, not by trying to grasp it and telling others, hey, that's mine, I own it, and I'm the best, and I know everything, but by putting part of you in it right here and right now. And that's when you give it um you're an individual character, and you're adding to it. So it's not yours because you own it, but it's um, you own it, yes, but you don't own it like you own, I don't know, like something that you bought in a store, but you own it because you make it yours and you become it as well.
You
Indeed.
become.
Yeah, I'm wondering, if we examined civilizations from the past, and tribes, and different cultures, what kind of rituals have uh, have they practiced in the past that have kind of gone by the wayside? And what are those things that we might learn from looking into that stuff? Because I do feel like that's certainly another area that we could learn a great deal from rather quickly, being that, in a lot of cases, you know, a lot of these tribal rituals and stuff took centuries, possibly millennia, to develop, uh, when they didn't have technology to distract them. But it was more about, the individual's experience and the group's experience as well. And I think of like the Iroquois Nation is one in which there's not a whole lot known, but from my understanding, they may have been at peace for thousands of years. And they have a story of the great peacemaker. And to some degree, that history has been erased, and it might be something that's very useful, because people that respect peace and can maintain peace for hundreds, possibly thousands of years, probably have some pretty strong rituals.
What about that lady, Kuan Yin? She's from China, and she was alive like 2,000 years ago or something. And we still, like, her statues everywhere. We still talk about her because she was so kind.
Hmm.
And it's a person.
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard about her.
Indeed. But something that seems to stand out is that anyone or any group that is strong for freedom and is spreading freedom in a peaceful way, um, that certainly lives dangerous. whether whether it's a group or an organization, or whether it's individuals that stood out in history, um, you know uh, quite a few of them had like an abrupt end to their physical existence here. So it seems dangerous, but dangerous for who and for what? So it certainly
Yeah.
seems dangerous for those who don't like to see this world um, filled with
Yeah. Well,
people
if
that are
we've got
free.
a mass population of zombies or zombified people that don't really recognize any real value, and they go around destroying everything that is meaningful, yeah, eventually everything that's valuable will be destroyed. But if we don't take that path, if we don't allow people to zombify us, I think we're going to be all right. But but that's certainly something to consider. You know, like how do we defend ourselves from people that don't want to really, you know, that really embody what Bruce Lee is talking about in that quote there. You know, where they just turn to this rigidity of kind of a limited understanding of what something is, and then it devolves into meaninglessness.
Yeah. Yeah, so in other words, how can we add um, value, meaningfulness to the rituals that we already, are engaged in? So like if you look at our lives, what are the kind of rituals? What are the things that we're doing already? And from a background as a, as a trainer, as a personal trainer, as a coach, um, that might be the easiest thing, to start looking at it, because instead of having to try something totally new, and oh, that's a lot, um, that's a lot of effort, a lot of energy that you have to put in to create something new and to adapt like new habits and whatever. But is there something that I'm doing already? Is there something in my day-to-day life that have been doing, but I didn't really know why, or haven't really put much attention to it, but I'm already doing it? So can you add value? Can you add a little depth and meaningfulness to
Intention.
something mundane that you might be doing already? And what could that be in your life?
Yeah, you can add intention to everything you do. You can bless your water, you can bless your journey, you can bless your cabra. Hang on, I got to tell you about this Guan Yin. So I tried to look it up just now, and apparently I misremembered or something. Like I remember was reading an article it said she was alive in this year, da 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 da, but apparently not. So she's a goddess. We still can find it.
Yeah.
But I like, but it was a really long time ago. And now when I like, sometimes things change on the internet. Like long time ago, it could have been, yeah, there was a woman, da 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 da. Now it's like, oh no, it's a representation of a Sanskrit goddess. So
Yeah.
not a real person. So that's also possible. I don't know.
I thought
I
I
don't know.
thought
I
what
have
you just said before was really important, because you gave some really practical advice, whether you were hinting at eating, at drinking. Those are things we do every day. So and you already highlighted there are ways how you can, or every time I drink a sip of water, I'm drinking freedom, I'm drinking peace. Every time I take a breath, you're breathing. Some argue you're not breathing, but you are being breathed. If that makes sense. So when you're working out, when you meet people, when you're relating, when you're building relationships, when you're communicating, add something to that. That's that can be a ritual as well. Or I don't know, every time, I before I hang up with my grandma on the phone, I make sure I tell her I love her. That can become a ritual. Every time my wife comes home, like I give her a kiss, or whatever it is. But you can, those small mundane things, and you start on adapting and adding those to your daily life, and you soon see that the awareness that you have for the things that you do is like increasing and is skyrocketing, and then all in a sudden you haven't really changed anything on the physical level, because you're still doing the same things that you did before, but your whole life is transformed within that framework of the physical deeds, of the physical actions that you're taking, just because you're adding awareness and meaning to them, and you're making them into little rituals that you perform. And I just see there's a comment from Cassandra. Just what I was thinking. They are very old. I think they are very old. Traditional rituals withheld. Be, they are very old traditional rituals withheld because they are so powerful and still relevant. Yeah, true. And
absolutely.
maybe some certainly are being withheld, and others are watered down, or are the meaningfulness, that's what made them meaningful and powerful as well for us, is being taken away. We talked about Christmas and Easter, and how those ancient, how the ancient meaning of those celebrations was taken out and was replaced by sugarous stuff and
Santa
presents.
Claus and Easter bunnies.
Yes, and all the mushrooms are gone.
Yeah, but I think that, one of the things I just want to reiterate what you said there, Dennis, because it is like the intent that you put into something, that if it's, kissing your wife when she comes home, The understanding of that ritual is what makes it meaningful. And by practicing it on a regular basis, it is what really brings meaning to your life and really reassures you that, these things are important, and so like practicing those things religiously is something that, can bring about a much deeper level of trust amongst the people that are practicing them, as well as, really deliver that value, to other people as an example.
Yeah, just the same, because we're talking about wives already. Just the same with marriage, right? So it took me a while also to understand that, marriage, it was never something like I really thought about too much. And it's like, oh, that's some kind of thing that you have to do, and why do I have to sign a paper, and what's all that about, and is it for like taxes, and but then it's really also it's what you put into it. Is it a reminder of what of the depth of a relationship, of the meaning, of the added meaning that you give to a relationship, or is it, do you see it as an expression of the deep meaning that you have, that you're giving that relationship? And then all of this outside stuff, signing and having to go to this office and doing that, or even the pastor, so that, that's just the outside, beautification and music and ringing the bells and that stuff. But what's really the meaning, the meaning of it is on the inside. That's, nobody can see that, nobody will observe that or cheer you for it, but that's something you add to it, and the relevant other, of course, as well, ideally. And so that is really, it took me a while to actually see beyond just the superficial outside celebrations that are there, and to recognize that, even if it's your birthday, if it's uh, these are things you can just celebrate them and get a present and thank you, or you can say, oh wow, this is a moment for me to, to look back at the last year, and to, look out to the next year, what has gone, what's going well, what not, where we do want to change, and you can add meaning to those little things. And you don't have to wait for the celebration, but you can just wait for the sun to rise tomorrow, to go down tonight and celebrate that as well. And, or to
Or to go
celebrate the
down
flower
to,
by the
yes,
by the roadside.
right.
Sorry.
The sun's still up, high up.
Sorry, say that again.
The sun is still high up in the sky over here on the Pacific. Yes.
All righty. Well, I think we've probably done this topic justice. So
I think we could talk for another 6 hours, but this is a good intro for this topic, and we can probably take it apart and have specific rituals, like discuss watching TV for an hour, or reading newspapers and things like that. How they affect our brain, and what is like how, some there's an excellent video by Ian Maxwell, I believe, about propaganda and what stuff is hidden in advertisements and newspapers and billboards. It's very interesting topic.
Yeah, there's much to learn about the symbolism that is there, whether it's in logos or in movies and series. And I feel, adding to Mike, your expertise, the journaling section, it might be, good advice to, if you have to, if you make the time, because we all have time, to sit down and journal about that, journal about rituals that you have been doing, how meaningful are they to you, rituals that you would want to let go of, or rituals that you would want to accept, or start for yourself, for your family, for your friends. Maybe journal a little bit about the kind of people that you already met and that you want to build something with, or the kind of people that you're looking out for. What are the kind of feathers that you're looking for in other people? What are the feathers that you already have on your hat, and do you want to add some more? What will you have to do? Who will you have to be in order to add those feathers to your hat? I think there is much room, and it only requires like a
You
quiet
could
corner
do
and
a
a pen.
ritual. You could do a ritual where you like take a poster board and hang it up on the wall and draw a feather every time you do something that pleases you.
yeah,
Give yourself a feather.
Yeah, there's an infinite amount of those. In fact, I think that's one of those ways that you could, stop the materialism and start creating rituals for the people, the family, the friends, the people around you that, actually demonstrate you care about them rather than just giving them material gifts. Something that actually represents something much more powerful, I think, could be the ritual.
And then, of course, if you want to take the shortcuts, you could always, come to terms with the fact that, the title of today is "Are Your Rituals Keeping You in Bondage?" So, if it is that you feel that that your rituals are keeping you in bondage, and you want a shortcut, then you could ponder upon the fact that the real you, the you that you truly are, can never be kept in bondage, and was never and will never be and is not in bondage. But the one that's in bondage, if you feel so, if you believe so, is the one, that in your mind are creating. So you think that you are in bondage by your rituals, but what will it take for you to stop thinking that way? And who would you have to be, or who would you have to tap into in order to see that really and truly you are already free, and therefore no ritual can keep you in bondage? But it's always fun because we're here already, so why not create a few rituals that free us from the belief and from the thinking that we are in bondage, and that certainly will help as well. Just one of those strategies that we can use and apply to our lives.
Tiny ants who keep walking on me. Tiny miniature ants tickling.
All righty. Well,
thanks everybody for listening.
Yes.
Yeah, let's end there.
Thank you very much, Cassandra, for the comment, and we hope it was valuable for all of you, and looking forward to next week.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.